everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and its significance in the personal injury, trucking accidents, wrongful death, civil rights, and many other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding, and heart for all suffering individuals. More Injury Funding is a sponsor, member, associate, or business partner of this podcast, Academy of Truck Accident Attorneys, Sandy Springs Bar Association, Georgia Association of Paralegals, State Bar of Georgia, and Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. In today's episode, we have a very special guest, Tom Ashenden with Ashenden Associates PC, based in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Tom today. He was born and raised in Chicago until college. One of 6 boys, mom was an only child, and dad was a public defender. When he was 5, he had a 2-bedroom and 1-bath home for 5 boys. He was nominated with several awards, including AV rated by Martindale Hubbell Super Lawyers for 10 years in a row. He's married to Beverly. Katie is 29, and he's working for an ad agency in Chicago as an art director. Law firm experiences of Tom, Bell Desidario, sole practitioner for a few years, then formed Quirk and Ashenden for 8 years, then Ashenden, Flynn and Gottlieb for 7.5 years, and it's been Ashenden Associates PC for 21 years. Tom's law partner is Gary Powell, who has been with the firm going on 3 years. The firm is hiring another lawyer, listen well, who is expected to start in August, actually. So tell me, a little bit more about yourself.
Well, Laura, I'm so excited to be here with you. I've been anticipating this and looking forward to it for a couple of weeks now, and it's great to be with you.
Well, today, Attorney Tom will dive deep into the topic of the role of medical experts in personal injury cases. What Tom does is he practices auto cases, or he works on auto cases, truck collisions, specifically when it comes to very serious injuries, and premises liability also on very serious injuries. So at the end of this episode, we'll have a fun pop-up question for Tom. So stay tuned in. You, my dear listeners, are here for a treat today with Attorney Tom Ashenden. So again, welcome to this episode, Tom.
Thank you, Laura. Again, it's great to be with you, and I'm looking forward to this.
Excellent. So, how long have you been practicing law, and always in personal injury field?
Well, I started off at a firm, as you said in the intro, Bell Desidario, and that was a general practice firm. We did everything: divorces, incorporated businesses, and we did go to court in the domestic relations cases. And then I was asked to hang my shingle by a friend, Richard Maddow, in downtown Atlanta. So I moved from the firm in Buckhead to Atlanta, and shared space with some very good lawyers, and had my office across the hall from the premier plaintiff's personal injury firm in Atlanta, Ross and Finch, which now is known as Finch McCraney. And that's pretty much how I got started.
That's wonderful. Well, since today we'll be talking specifically about medical experts, let's start our conversation about the importance of medical experts in personal injury cases. What is their role in providing objective and specialized opinions, Tom?
Well, their role is very important. Typically, we need to establish for the jury causation, and the medical doctors are frequently asked to talk about what the basis of their opinion is, and they form that opinion after doing a physical examination and lots of tests on the patient or client, and almost always based on the films, the x-rays, MRIs, CAT scans.
Okay. All right. And now I would like to go deeper into qualifications and your usual selection process. what, in your opinion, is the criteria for selecting medical experts, including their qualifications, experience, and expertise in relevant medical fields?
Well, if I am compelled to select a doctor for my client, it's going to be because the client has no health insurance, and the client is striking out with finding a doctor on her own. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, I look for doctors who would have some expertise in the part of the body that has been traumatized in the collision or in the fall. And of course I go by reputation as well.
Of course, absolutely. That does matter. Can you discuss the importance of finding credible and unbiased experts?
Well, it's very important. And there are many all throughout Atlanta and Georgia. And I'm referring right now to treating physicians. And they eventually can become experts when causation comes into question, like I was alluding to earlier. However, on the defense side, they tend to retain doctors who will testify in certain ways that they hope will harm the plaintiff's case, bring into question causation. And in my practice, I've routinely taken those doctors' depositions or cross-examined them at trial, and to show that they're biased, mm-hmm. That they do this a lot for insurance companies, and that many of them fall into this category. Their primary source of income is testifying. And so they don't carry the same credibility as a treating physician.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's move into another essential part of our discussion, that is educating the jury. Can you please explain how medical experts help educate the jury about complex medical concepts and terminology? Sure.
We just had a case that was supposed to go to trial in July this month, mm-hmm. and we got it fully ready, and we were excited to put up the case in front of a jury. And the insurance company for this major commercial defendant paid, or finally offered so much money that we couldn't say no. But in that case, we had major issues, and the medical expert was critical because our client he was in his early 60s, and he had a major history of pre-existing issues in his right knee that mm-hmm. was damaged by the commercial vehicle in the wreck. And so the treating doctor, who he found on his own, we took his deposition, and we had medical illustrations drawn up that showed the pre-existing condition, what the films showed before the collision, because he was treating them and giving them injections before the collision even happened. So okay. We were in a really good position that way. And then the medical illustrations showed the graphic surgery. First, there was arthroscopic surgery, which is not very major. But then when that didn't resolve the issues, our client Gerald had to undergo a total knee replacement. Mm-hmm. And the doctor opined that the total knee replacement was necessitated by the collision, and we had medical illustrations showing what's involved in a total knee replacement.
And so what terminology, is there a specific name for terminology that medical experts use during the deposition, trial, arbitration?
Oh, it's the full gamut, Laura. I mean, it just depends on what the diagnosis is and what body parts are involved, but sure, absolutely. And I think I know where you're going, and it's a very good question, because in Georgia we have a statute that allows us to have the doctor do a medical narrative, which can be introduced as evidence mm-hmm. in state court. Okay. And so in that statute, it requires the doctors to put in parentheses, for example, the layperson's terms for whatever the medical condition or procedure is. And so doctors are becoming acclimated to doing that, and it helps when they testify. And I always remind them of the importance of, don't just use the medical terms, just, please explain in layperson's terms how or what the patient is going through so the jury can understand it.
Okay, you explained it very well. Thank you. Now, in your many years of experience, what are the biggest challenges of presenting medical information in a way that is easily understandable to non-medical professionals?
Well, I think Gerald's case is again a good example of simplifying the what's going on medically with a medical narrative, and then the deposition testimony along with the medical illustration showing the jury that this is what happened and this is why the doctor has come to the conclusion that the total knee replacement is causally related to the trauma caused in the collision. Okay.
Now, let's take a closer look at assessing causation and damages. How medical experts evaluate the causal link between the accident or incident and the plaintiff's injuries?
It's always going to be pretty much the same. It's going to be based on the films. Well, first of all, it's going to be based on the physical examination of the body part that's been traumatized. It's going to be based on the films that they will take almost always in the hospital and at the doctor's office. And it's going to be based on the history of the patient. And it's going to be based on the physical examination as well.
When you say films, do you mean MRI, CT scans, X-rays?
All of the above.
Okay.
That's right.
Excellent. Can you please elaborate on how medical experts assess the extent of damages, including physical, emotional, and financial impacts?
Well, medical experts assess the extent of their patient's injuries by performing these physical examinations. And frequently, doctors will note in the history if the patient is going through emotional trauma as well. And as far as the financial aspect of the case, that's not for the doctor. That's for an economist or a life care planner, typically a vocational economist, an economist, or a life care planner.
Okay. Now let's jump now into the expert testimony and cross-examination. What is the usual process of presenting expert testimony in the court?
Well, typically doctor's testimony is presented by the attorney taking the doctor's video deposition for evidence. And that's the usual way because doctors shouldn't be expected to sit in a courtroom all day and wait for the court or for the judge or the attorney to say, okay, now it's time to call you to the witness stand. So it's an evidentiary deposition by video in advance of trial.
Very good. And what is the role of cross-examination by opposing counsel? Can you highlight the strategies used by attorneys to challenge or discredit medical expert opinions?
Absolutely. The pre-existing conditions of a plaintiff create hurdles for us, challenges. And we do have the benefit of the law in Georgia being that you take your plaintiff as you find her. And so that's that, and the challenges are to not allow the defense medical examiner to discredit the plaintiff. And the way we can do that is I tell all my clients this and experts that we have to win the credibility battle. And we can win the credibility battle when the doctor is treating the patient. When the defense brings in an expert who is mainly reviewing medical records, that is not as compelling as a doctor who's looking at the body part of the patient and has done the films himself and has come to his or her own conclusions or opinions.
Okay, very good. Tom, can you please tell me, how do you overall help your clients achieve results they deserve? Do you do anything differently from other attorneys? Anything in your own unique Tom Ashenden's special signature way?
Well, I have had people in the firm tell me that they've never, that they don't usually see lawyers spend as much time as I do with the clients in preparing them for depositions. And of course, I think all of us would be crazy not to spend a ton of time getting ready for trial. But I spend maybe 3 hours 2 weeks before the client's deposition, and then early the next week, if it's a Friday deposition, I meet with the client again on Monday, and we're going over all of the medical records and making sure that the client understands the tricks that we can expect the defense lawyer to try and pull during the deposition.
Okay. So you do this with every single client of yours?
Every single client.
That's
we
great.
don't do a deposition without spending hours and days with clients.
Preparation is the key.
Right. Right.
I love it. Yeah. So Tom, if anyone gets injured and is looking for Ashenden Associates PC, how can they reach you, Tom?
Well, our office number is 770-394-8909. And I don't hesitate to give my cell phone to my clients. It's 404-643-4556. So a text or a call on my cell is fine. And then my email is tom@ashendenlaw.com, tom@ashendenlaw.com, or gary@ashendenlaw.com, my partner.
Okay. And do you have a website, maybe a LinkedIn profile?
Both. And the website is ashendenlaw.com. And the LinkedIn is just a search of my name and you'll find me.
Excellent. Now, before we conclude today's episode, I have one last question for you, Tom. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. If you could have a dinner party with any 3 people in the world, living or dead, who would you invite and why?
Wow. I would have to say, Laura, that I have thought about this before, because it's not the first time I've heard this question, and I've seen others answer it, but I would say Thomas Jefferson, Martin Luther King Jr., and John F. Kennedy.
Okay. And why these 3 individuals?
Well, they're just heroes to me. You know, I admire all 3 of them so much.
Okay.
And it would be especially fun to have the opportunity to have dinner and drinks with JFK. He was known to be in the East Room with 3 Nobel laureates, and they were so impressive to him and all of the press and the people in the White House who were there observing them. And he said, "This is the greatest gathering of talent in this house, with the possible exception, or in this room, with the possible exception of when Thomas Jefferson ate lunch by himself."
I love it. That's amazing. Now, would you have them all 3 at once at one dinner party, or would you rather have them separately just to spend more time with each of them individually?
Oh, definitely separately to spend more time with each of them, for
So
sure.
Which one would be first and which one middle, which one would be the last one?
I'd probably do Martin Luther King Jr. first, and then JFK, and then Thomas Jefferson.
I love it. Thank you. Well, that was Attorney Tom Ashenden with Ashenden Associates PC, ladies and gentlemen. Tom, well, thank you so much for being my very special guest on today's episode at It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast. I want to thank you all for listening to our story about the role of medical experts in personal injury cases today. For more tips and tricks on legal funding and personal injury law related topics, follow me, like, and subscribe. Also download at More Injury Funding, and It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, Deezer, Listen Notes, and Player FM. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, Yelp, Google Business Profile, and on my website at www.moreinjuryfunding.com, more with 2 O's. I can't wait to see and hear you all, my dear listeners, at my next upcoming episode. Until then, be well.